3 years ago, his ship called the Artemis 7 disappeared during a simple survey mission near the Velen cluster. The people of Earth held ceremonies for him and his crew. His mother cried at his memorial service. His younger sister placed flowers on an empty grave. The whole galaxy believed he was gone forever. But Ethan did not die. His ship had crashed on a small moon at the edge of known space. The impact killed everyone else on board. Ethan woke up alone in the wreckage with broken ribs and a bleeding head. He should have given up. He should have accepted his fate. But humans are stubborn creatures, and Ethan was more stubborn than most. For 3 long years, he survived on that dead moon. He ate emergency rations until they ran out, then learned to grow food in the ship's broken hydroponics bay. He breathed recycled air that tasted like metal. He talked to himself just to hear a voice. Some nights, he screamed at the empty sky because the silence was too heavy to bear, but he never stopped working. Piece by piece, repaired his damaged shuttle. He pulled parts from the wreckage of his main ship. He used tools that were never designed for the repairs he needed. His hands became rough with scars. His eyes grew tired from endless work under dim emergency lights. But slowly, impossibly, the shuttle began to work again. On the day he finally lifted off from that moon, Ethan cried for the first time in 3 years. His joy did not last long. The shuttle's navigation system was damaged. He had no idea where he was. When he checked the star charts, his heart sank. He was deep inside the territory of the Serati Dominion, one of the oldest and most powerful alien civilizations in the galaxy. The Serati had refused all contact with humans for centuries. No human ship was allowed in their space. No human diplomat had ever spoken with their leaders. They were a mystery, and they wanted to stay that way. Ethan knew he was in danger. If the Serati found him, they might arrest him. They might kill him. He needed to leave their territory as fast as possible and find his way back to human space, but his engine was failing. His fuel was running low. He had no way to make the long journey home as he drifted through space. Trying to think of a plan, his communication system picked up a strange signal. It was a broadcast in dozens of alien languages, and his translator struggled to make sense of it. But slowly, the words became clear. The Serati were holding a coronation. A new queen was about to take the throne on their homeworld. Representatives from every known species in the quadrant had been invited to witness the ceremony. Every species except humans. Ethan stared at the message for a long time. His mind began to form a desperate idea. If diplomats from many different worlds would be at this coronation, perhaps he could find someone friendly. Perhaps he could explain his situation and ask for help getting home. It was a crazy plan. It was dangerous. But Ethan had survived 3 years on a dead moon by attempting impossible things. He changed course and headed for the Serati homeworld. The planet was beautiful in a way that made Ethan's chest tight. It had purple oceans and cities that glowed like jewels in the night. Towers of crystal rose from the surface, catching the light of 3 distant suns. Ethan had never seen anything so lovely in his entire life. He landed his shuttle in a remote area outside the capital city. He knew he could not walk into the coronation looking like a human. His species was not welcome here. So he searched through the cargo hold of his shuttle and found some old trading robes he had picked up years ago. They were Serati in design, long and flowing with a deep hood that could hide his face. He put them on and looked at himself in a broken mirror. He did not look like a Serati. He was too short, too broad, and his skin did not glow with their famous bioluminescent markings. But in a crowd of thousands, maybe no one would look too closely. He walked into the city. The Serati were tall and graceful, with skin that shifted colors like living light. They moved in ways that seemed almost like dancing. Their voices were musical, rising and falling in patterns that sounded like songs. Ethan kept his head down and tried not to stare. The Grand Sanctum, where the coronation was taking place, was the largest building Ethan had ever seen. It was made of crystal so pure that it seemed to be built from frozen light. Thousands of beings from dozens of worlds were streaming through its massive doors. Ethan joined the crowd and slipped inside. The interior took his breath away. The ceiling rose so high, it seemed to touch the sky. Floating platforms held spectators from every corner of the galaxy. And at the center of it all, K's crystalline throne waited for its new queen. Ethan found a spot in the crowd and tried to make himself small. He would wait for the ceremony to end, then find a diplomat who might help him. That was the plan. Simple and careful, but the moment he stepped into position, something strange happened. The Serati around him began to whisper. Their glowing markings flickered in patterns that seemed urgent and confused. Guards in silver armor turned their heads toward him. The whispers grew louder. Ethan's heart began to pound. Had they discovered him? Was he about to be arrested? Then a hush fell over the entire chamber. High above, on a platform near the throne, a female Serati stood frozen. She was dressed in robes of living light, and her silver eyes were wide with shock. She was clearly the queen who was about to be crowned, and she was staring directly at Ethan. For a long moment, 10,000 beings held their breath. The silence was so complete that Ethan could hear his own heartbeat. Then the queen raised one slender hand, and her voice rang through the hall like a bell. "You," she said. "I've seen your face in the dreaming pool since I was a child. Come forward, human," the crowd gasped. Guards moved toward Ethan with weapons drawn. But the queen's next words stopped everyone in their tracks. "Do not harm him," she commanded. "He is not a stranger here." Her silver eyes never left Ethan's face. "He is my destiny." Ethan stood frozen as every eye in the chamber turned toward him. He had come here looking for a way home. Instead, he had found something far more complicated. The chamber exploded into chaos. Ambassadors from a dozen worlds jumped to their feet. Their voices filled the air with shock and anger. Serati nobles flashed their skin bright red, which Ethan somehow knew meant outrage. Guards in silver armor rushed toward him with their energy weapons humming and ready to fire. Ethan raised his hands slowly. His heart was beating so fast he thought it might burst. He had no weapon. He had no plan. He was surrounded by aliens who had every reason to kill him. But the queen moved faster than anyone expected. She stepped off her platform and floated down through the air, her robes of light trailing behind her like wings. She landed on the sanctum floor and walked toward Ethan with perfect calm. The guards hesitated. The crowd fell silent. Everyone watched as their future queen crossed the space between the throne and the stranger. She stopped, just a few feet away from Ethan, and studied him with those strange silver eyes. "You do not understand, do you?" she asked softly. Her voice was gentle, almost sad. "You do not know why you survived when you should have died. You do not know why your ship crashed on that moon instead of burning up in space. You do not know why you are standing here in this place, at this exact moment." Ethan swallowed hard. "I am just trying to get home." The queen tilted her head to one side. "Home is not a place, Commander Cole. Home is a purpose, and your purpose has been written in our most sacred texts for 3,000 years. A chill ran down Ethan's spine. She knew his name. She knew his rank. How was that possible? The queen gestured with one hand, and the air above them came alive with light. Holographic images appeared, showing ancient symbols and strange pictures that Ethan could not read. But one image was clear enough to make his blood run cold. It showed a human. A man in a uniform, just like the one Ethan wore under his stolen robes. He was standing beside a Serati queen, and together they faced a wave of darkness that seemed ready to swallow everything. "This is the prophecy of the Destined One," the queen explained. "For 3,000 years, our dreaming pool has shown us visions of the future. The same vision, again and again. A dying star, a war that consumes all life, and a creature from a forbidden world who stands beside the queen when all others run away." She turned back to Ethan. "Your face. Your species. Your uniform. The pool showed us everything." An old Serati with dim, fading markings stepped forward. His robes showed he was someone important, perhaps a high priest or chancellor. His voice shook with anger. "This is madness." He shouted, "You cannot trust our entire civilization to a primitive species. The prophecy could be wrong. It could be a trick." Other voices joined his. The chamber filled with arguments and accusations, but the queen remained calm. The prophecy spoke of a test, she said, raising her voice above the noise. If this human is truly the destined one, he will pass the trial. If he fails, she looked at Ethan with something like apology in her eyes. Then he dies, and we continue waiting for another. Ethan felt the world tilt beneath his feet. What if I refuse? What if I just want to go home? The Queen's expression grew serious. Then our dominion falls. The shadow that approaches will consume us, star by star, world by world. And when it finishes with us, ... She looked toward the crystal dome above them, toward the distant stars. It will come for your Earth too. For the first time, Ethan looked carefully at the sky, and he saw it. At the edge of the visible heavens, there was a darkness. Not just empty space, but something else. Something that seemed to eat the light around it. Something that looked hungry in a way that made no sense. What is that? Ethan whispered. We call it the Void Requiem, the Queen answered. It is older than our civilization. Older than the stars themselves. For millions of years, it slept in the space between galaxies. But now it has awakened. And it is coming for us. The old Chancellor spoke again, his voice bitter. The Requiem cannot be stopped. We have known this for centuries. Our only hope was the prophecy, the promise that someone would come to save us. And now someone has come, the Queen said firmly. She looked at Ethan with a mixture of hope and desperation. I have seen your face in my dreams for 30 years. I have waited my entire life for you. Please, Commander Cole, take the trial. Prove that you are the one the prophecy promised. Ethan looked around the chamber. He saw thousands of alien faces watching him. He saw fear in their glowing eyes. He saw hope that they were afraid to feel. These beings had rejected humanity for centuries, but now they needed him. They needed a human to save them. He thought about his home, his mother, who thought he was dead, his sister, who had cried at his empty grave. He wanted to see them again more than anything in the universe. But if what the Queen said was true, there would be no home to return to. The shadow would take everything. Ethan took a deep breath. He had survived 3 years alone on a dead moon. He had rebuilt a broken ship with his bare hands. He had crossed hostile space in a failing shuttle because he refused to give up. He was a human, and humans did impossible things. Tell me about this trial, he said. The Queen's markings flickered with soft gold light. Relief, hope, gratitude. It is called the Trial of 3 Flames, she said. No outsider has ever attempted it. In 4,000 years, only 17 candidates have survived, and the others, the trial claimed them. Their names were erased. Their failures were sealed in silence. Ethan nodded slowly. What happens if I pass? Then you will stand beside me as the prophecy promised. Together, we will face the Void Requiem. Together, we will try to save everything. The old Chancellor made a sound of disgust. He will fail. Humans are weak. They are young. They do not have our gifts. Ethan looked at the old alien. He thought about the moon where he had spent 3 years fighting to survive. He thought about the friends he had lost in the crash. He thought about every moment when he had wanted to give up, but chose to keep going instead. Maybe you are right, Ethan said quietly. Maybe I will fail. But I have learned something in my life. Sometimes the beings who seem weakest are the ones who refuse to stop trying. He turned to the Queen. I will take your trial. The Queen smiled. It was a small expression, barely visible, but it transformed her face into something beautiful. Then come. Commander Cole, let us discover if you are truly what the universe promised us. She extended her hand toward him. After a moment of hesitation, Ethan took it. The chamber erupted into whispers once again, but Ethan did not care. Whatever happened next, he would face it the same way he had faced everything else in his life. One step at a time, one breath at a time. Until the end, the trial began at midnight. Ethan stood before a massive stone doorway deep beneath the grand sanctum. The walls around him were covered in ancient carvings that told stories he could not understand. Torches of blue flame cast strange shadows that seemed to move on their own, Queen Valith stood beside him. She had told him her name after the ceremony, speaking it softly as if sharing a secret. Now she watched him with those silver eyes that seemed to see more than any human eyes could. The trial of 3 flames tests the soul, she explained. Each flame reveals a different truth about the one who faces it. Many who enter these doors are strong in body, but strength of body means nothing here. Ethan nodded. He had been given a few hours to rest and eat before the trial, but he had not been able to sleep. His mind kept returning to the darkness at the edge of the sky. The void requiem. The thing that would destroy everything if he failed? What should I expect? He asked. Valeth shook her head. I cannot tell you. The trial is different for everyone who takes it. It finds your deepest fears, your greatest weaknesses. It shows you who you really are. She paused. Many cannot bear what they see. The old chancellor stood nearby, watching with cold eyes. He had made it clear that he expected Ethan to fail. He wanted Ethan to fail. In his mind, humans were too young and too foolish to be trusted with the fate of an ancient civilization. Ethan looked at the stone doorway. Blue light flickered in the passage beyond. Here I go, he said quietly. Valeth touched his arm. Her fingers were cool against his skin. Remember this, Commander Cole. The trial cannot kill you unless you let it. Your mind is your greatest weapon. Do not forget who you are. Ethan took a deep breath and walked through the doorway. The passage behind him disappeared the moment he stepped inside. He was alone in a vast darkness that seemed to stretch forever in every direction. There was no floor beneath his feet, but somehow he did not fall. He simply stood in emptiness, waiting. Then the first flame appeared. It was a maze. Walls of shadow rose around him, forming corridors that twisted and turned in impossible ways. Ethan began to walk, but every path he chose seemed to lead back to where he started. The maze shifted constantly, changing its shape whenever he thought he understood it. But the walls were not the true challenge. As Ethan walked deeper into the maze, he began to see things. Faces in the shadows, voices in the silence. His mother, crying at his memorial service. His sister, visiting his empty grave. His crew members from the Artemis 7, their bodies broken in the crash. You let us die, they whispered. You survived when we did not. Why you? Why not us? Ethan stopped walking. The guilt he had carried for 3 years rose up like a wave, threatening to drown him. He had asked himself the same questions 1,000 times. Why had he lived when everyone else died? What made him special? The maze pressed in around him. The shadows grew darker. The voices grew louder. But then Ethan did something the maze did not expect. He sat down. He closed his eyes and let the visions come. He saw his crew members one by one, remembering their faces, their names, their jokes, and their dreams. He did not push the memories away. He let himself feel the pain of losing them. I am sorry, he said to the shadows. I am sorry I could not save you. I think about you every day. I carry you with me wherever I go. The voices fell silent. I do not know why I survived, Ethan continued. Maybe there's no reason. Maybe the universe is random and cruel. But I choose to believe that my survival means something. I choose to honor your memories by living a life that matters. He opened his eyes. The maze was gone. He stood in an empty chamber with a single doorway glowing ahead. He had passed the first flame. The second flame was a room made of mirrors. Ethan saw his reflection from every angle. But these were not normal reflections. Each mirror showed a different version of himself. One showed him as a hero, strong and brave. Another showed him as a coward, weak and afraid. A third showed him as a monster, cruel and selfish. A voice filled the room. What do you sacrifice? The chamber demands payment. Give up what you value most, and you may pass. Ethan looked at the mirrors. He thought about what the Serati had sacrificed in the past. Their memories, their names, their glowing markings. They gave up things they could touch and see, but Ethan was human, and humans valued different things. I give up my certainty, he said aloud. I give up my belief that I understand everything. I give up my assumption that I am always right. The mirrors flickered. The voice was silent for a long moment. "This is unexpected," it finally said. "No candidate has ever offered something so invisible." "Invisible things can be the most valuable," Ethan replied. "My certainty has caused me more trouble than any physical thing I own. It has made me blind to other possibilities. It has made me deaf to other voices. I am better off without it." The mirrors shattered. Not violently, but gently, falling like rain around him. When the last piece settled, the new doorway had appeared. He had passed the second flame. The third flame was a bridge. It was narrow, barely wide enough for one person to walk. It stretched across an abyss so deep that Ethan could not see the bottom. On the far side, Valeth stood waiting. "The bridge of trust," she called across the gap. "It will hold only if we both believe. Any doubt, any hesitation, and it will collapse." Ethan looked at the bridge. It seemed solid enough, but he knew appearances meant nothing in this place. The real test was not physical. It was emotional. He did not know Valeth. He had met her only hours ago. She was an alien from a civilization that had rejected his species for centuries. How could he trust her completely? But then he remembered something. On the moon, during his darkest moments, Ethan had survived by making a choice. He had chosen to believe that rescue would come. He had chosen to hope even when hope seemed foolish. That belief had no evidence to support it. It was pure faith, and it had saved his life. Ethan stepped onto the bridge. The structure trembled, but did not break. He took another step, then another. He kept his eyes fixed on Valeth, on her silver gaze that had never wavered. Halfway across, he spoke. "I do not know if I am the one your prophecy promised. I do not know if prophecies are even real. But I know that you believe, and I have learned that belief itself has power." He took another step. "You waited 30 years for me. You saw my face in your dreams and held on to hope. That means something. Maybe it means everything." He reached the far side of the bridge. Gelet's markings glowed with bright gold light. He had seen that color before. It meant wonder. It meant joy. "No one has ever completed the trial so quickly," she whispered. "You are not what I expected, Commander Cole." Ethan allowed himself a small smile. "Humans are full of surprises." Valeth reached out and took his hand. Her touch was warm now, not cool like before. "The trial is complete," she said. "You have proven yourself worthy. Whatever comes next, we will face it together." Ethan looked back at the bridge, then at the abyss below. He had walked across emptiness by choosing to trust a stranger. Maybe that was what being human really meant. Not strength. Not intelligence. Just the stubborn refusal to stop believing in something better. Together, he agreed, and for the first time since crashing on that dead moon. Ethan felt like he might actually survive. What was coming? The coronation resumed 3 days after Ethan completed the trial. Everything had changed. The human who had arrived as a stranger now stood at the right hand of Queen Valeth as she received her crown. The same nobles who had demanded his death now watched in silence as their ancient prophecy unfolded before their eyes. Ethan wore new robes, given to him by the Sorati. They were dark blue with silver threads that caught the light. Valeth had explained that the colors represented wisdom and courage. He felt strange wearing them, like an actor in a costume. But he stood tall and kept his face calm. The crown was made of pure light. It floated above Velet's head, slowly descending until it rested on her brow. The moment it touched her, every Sorati in the chamber bowed. Their glowing markings pulsed in perfect harmony, like a single heartbeat shared across thousands of bodies. It was beautiful. It was alien. And it reminded Ethan how far he was from home. But the celebration did not last long. That night, alarms rang through the capital city. Ethan rushed to the observation deck of the palace where Valeth and her advisors had already gathered. They stared at the sky with expressions of pure terror. The darkness at the edge of the heavens had grown. What had been a shadow on the horizon was now a wall of emptiness stretching across half the visible sky. Stars that had been there hours ago were simply gone, swallowed by something that defied understanding. "The Void Requiem," Valeth said quietly. It has awakened fully. It is coming faster than we predicted. The old chancellor, whose name Ethan had learned was Vethkara, spoke in a voice that shook with fear. We have studied the Requiem for generations. It cannot be destroyed. It cannot be reasoned with. It feeds on consciousness itself, on the light of thinking minds. When it reaches us, it will consume everything we are. Ethan stared at the approaching darkness. It was hard to describe what he felt when he looked at it. Not fear exactly, though fear was part of it. More like ... sorrow. A deep, ancient sadness that seemed to radiate from the emptiness like cold from ice. How long do we have? He asked. Days, Vethkara answered. Perhaps only hours. We cannot know for certain. Valith turned away from the window. Her markings were pale gray, the Sarati color of grief. The prophecy said the destined one would stand beside me when the shadow came, but it never promised we would win. It never told us how to fight something that has no form, no body, no weakness. The advisors began to argue. Some wanted to evacuate the planet. Others wanted to prepare weapons that Ethan knew would be useless. A few simply stood in silence, accepting their doom. But Ethan was thinking on Earth. He had studied many things: history, science, philosophy. One lesson had always stayed with him. The greatest problems were never solved by force alone. They were solved by understanding. Tell me everything you know about the Requiem, he said. The advisors looked at him with confusion. Vethkara made a sound of frustration.
Hey, what good will knowledge do?
We have studied this entity for centuries. We know it is ancient. We know it feeds on thought. We know it brings silence wherever it goes. None of this has helped us stop it. But have you tried to understand it? Ethan pressed. Not just what it does, but why. What does it want? What drives it? Valith stepped closer to him. Her silver eyes were thoughtful. The ancient texts describe the Requiem as a being of absolute isolation. It has existed since before the first stars were born. It has never communicated with any other entity. It is alone in a way that no living creature can imagine. Alone, he repeated. For billions of years. No companions. No connection. Just endless silence. He walked to the window and looked at the approaching darkness. Up close, he could see it more clearly now. It was not empty. It was full of something, a presence so vast that his mind could barely grasp it. On Earth, Ethan said slowly, we have creatures that live in total darkness. Deep in our oceans, in caves where light has never reached. They are not evil. They are simply alone. They do not attack other creatures out of hatred. They attack because they do not understand that other creatures matter. He turned to face Valith. The Requiem is not a weapon. It is not a monster seeking destruction. It is something that has been alone so long that it has forgotten what connection means. Every time it encounters consciousness, it snuffs it out. Not because it wants to cause pain, but because other minds are just noise to it, static. It creates silence, because silence is all it has ever known. Vethkara shook his head. Even if you are right, what does it matter? We cannot change what the Requiem is. We cannot teach companionship to a being older than the stars. Maybe not, Ethan admitted. But has anyone ever tried? The chamber fell silent. The Sarati are telepathic, Ethan continued. Your minds are open. When you try to approach the Requiem, it overwhelms you because your thoughts are loud and exposed. But human minds are different. We are naturally isolated. We spend our entire lives trying to connect with others across the walls inside our own heads. He looked at Valith. I want to try something. I want to reach out to the Requiem. Not with weapons. Not with defenses. With communication? That is suicide, Vethkara said flatly. Any mind that touches the Requiem will be destroyed. Sarati mind, maybe. But I am not Sarati. Valith's markings flickered between colors. Fear, hope, uncertainty. What are you suggesting, Commander Cole? Ethan took a deep breath. I am suggesting that we stop running. I am suggesting that we stop fighting. Instead, I want to walk toward that thing and say hello. The advisors looked at him like he was insane. Perhaps he was. But Ethan had survived 3 years by refusing to accept impossible situations. Your prophecy said I would stand beside you when the shadow came, he reminded Valeth. Maybe this is what it meant. Not fighting. Not fleeing. Understanding. Valeth was silent for a long moment. Then she did something that shocked everyone in the room. She took his hand. Physical contact was sacred among the Serati. It was more intimate than a kiss, more binding than a vow. By taking his hand in front of her advisors, she was declaring her trust in him before her entire civilization. If you do this, she said quietly, I will do it with you. My telepathic abilities can amplify your message, carry it further into the void. Together, we might reach far enough to be heard. Ethan squeezed her hand. Are you sure? This could kill us both. Valeth smiled. It was small and sad and beautiful. The prophecy said we would stand together. It did not say for how long. But I would rather die trying to save my people than live knowing I did nothing. Ethan nodded. Then let us see if the darkness can learn to listen. Outside, the Void Requiem continued its approach, swallowing stars one by one. Inside, a human and a queen prepared to do something that had never been attempted in the history of the galaxy. They prepared to talk to the end of all things. Void Requiem arrived at dawn. It did not come with sound or fury. It simply appeared, blotting out the rising sun like a curtain being drawn across the sky. Where it passed, light simply stopped existing. Stars vanished. Colors faded. The universe itself seemed to hold its breath. On the surface of Serati Prime, billions of beings fell to their knees. The psychic weight of the Requiem pressed down on every conscious mind, a silence so heavy it felt like drowning. Children screamed and then went quiet. Elders clutched their heads and wept without tears. Even the strongest warriors collapsed, their glowing markings flickering and dimming in the grand sanctum. Ambassadors from a dozen worlds lay unconscious on the floor. Their minds could not bear the presence of something so vast, so ancient, so utterly alone. But two figures remained standing. Ethan and Valeth walked through the chaos, their hands still clasped together. Ethan could feel the pressure against his thoughts, a cold emptiness that whispered of meaninglessness and despair. But he did not fall. Human minds were built to resist isolation. They were built to reach across distances that seemed impossible. They climbed the tallest spire of the Grand Sanctum, a tower that had once been used to communicate with distant colonies. Now, it would serve a different purpose. At the top, they faced the sky. The Void Requiem hung above them like a wound in reality. Ethan could feel it now, not as darkness, but as presence. Something unimaginably old was looking down at them with. Something that might have been curiosity or might have been hunger. Veleth's markings glowed with effort. She was using every bit of her telepathic ability to create a bridge between Ethan's mind and the infinite emptiness above. I can feel it, she gasped. It is so vast, so cold. It does not understand what we are, then let us help it understand, Ethan said. He closed his eyes and reached out with his thoughts. Hello. The word went into the silence like a stone dropping into still water. For a long moment, nothing happened. Ethan could feel the Requiem's attention turning toward him. A pressure so immense it threatened to crush his consciousness into nothing. But he did not pull back. He had faced worse odds on that dead moon. He had screamed into empty space for 3 years and refused to stop hoping. What are you? The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. It was not sound. It was the absence of sound shaped into meaning. Ethan felt it in his bones, in his blood, in the deepest parts of his mind. I am alone too, he replied. I spent years in silence, talking to no one, wondering if anyone would ever hear me again. I know what emptiness feels like. The Requiem stirred. Confusion rippled through its vastness. You are small. You are brief. How can you know isolation? Because I am human, Ethan thought. We are born alone. We die alone. Every moment of our lives is spent trying to bridge the gap between ourselves and others. We build languages and art and music because we desperately want to be understood. We create families and friendships because we cannot bear to be truly isolated. He shared his memories with the ancient entity, not as an attack, but as a gift. He showed the moon where he had crashed, the endless days of solitude, the nights when he had screamed at the stars just to hear a voice, even if it was only his own. He showed the moment when he had almost given up, and the choice he made to keep going anyway. You survived, the Requiem observed. How? By choosing to believe that I was not truly alone. By holding on to hope even when hope seemed foolish. By trusting that somewhere out there, someone might be waiting for me. Valeth added her consciousness to his. Her telepathic gift wrapped around Ethan's thoughts and amplified them, sending waves of color and warmth into the void. These were things the Requiem had never experienced. Light, warmth, connection. Why do you reach out to me? The Requiem asked. Its confusion was growing. All others flee. All others fear. Because fear does not solve anything, Ethan replied. And because you are not as different from us as you think. You have simply been alone for so long that you have forgotten what it means to be connected. You silence other minds because their noise hurts you. But what if the noise could become music instead? He reached deeper into the entity's consciousness. He found something buried beneath billions of years of isolation. A memory, a feeling. The faintest echo of what the Requiem had been before it became the void. It had not always been alone. Long ago, in the first moments of the universe, the Requiem had been part of something larger, a web of consciousness that connected all things. But as the universe expanded, the web broke apart. The Requiem was left adrift, alone in a silence that grew deeper with every passing age. You remember? Ethan thought gently. You remember what it was like to be connected. The Requiem trembled. It was so long ago, it whispered, I have forgotten how. The silence became all I knew. The noise of other minds seemed wrong. I made silence because silence was the only thing that felt true. But it was not true, Valeth added. Her thoughts joined with Ethan's, creating a harmony that resonated through the void. Silence is not the natural state of the universe. Connection is. Even in the darkest reaches of space, light finds a way. Even after billions of years alone, you still have the capacity to remember, to feel, to choose something different. The Requiem was silent for a long time. The pressure against Ethan's mind did not lessen, but it changed. It was no longer crushing. It was listening. What would you have me do? The entity finally asked. Choose, Ethan replied. You can continue what you've been doing. You can silence every mind in this galaxy and the next, creating perfect emptiness forever. Or you can try something new. You can learn to listen instead of silence. You can discover what it means to connect after being alone for so long. It will be difficult, the Requiem said. I am vast. I am old. Change does not come easily to beings like me. It never does, Ethan agreed. But difficult is not the same as impossible. I rebuilt a broken ship with my bare hands. I crossed an entire quadrant of space in a failing shuttle. I walked into an alien ceremony as a stranger and became something more. Difficult things can still be done if you refuse to stop trying. The Requiem considered this. Then, slowly, impossibly, it began to withdraw. The darkness at the edge of the sky started to recede. Stars that had been swallowed began to reappear. The crushing weight on every conscious mind lifted gently, like a held breath being released. I will observe, the Requiem said. I will learn. I make no promises, small ones, but I will try. It was not a victory. It was not an ending, but it was enough. On the spire, Ethan collapsed to his knees. The effort had drained everything he had. Valeth knelt beside him, her markings glowing with exhausted gold. You did it, she breathed. You spoke to something that has destroyed civilizations, and you made it stop. Ethan laughed weakly. I did not make it do anything. I just gave it a choice. Across Serati Prime, beings were rising from the ground. They looked up at a sky that was no longer dying. They did not understand what had happened, but they knew they were still alive when they should not have been. In the days that followed, the news spread across the galaxy. The Void Requiem had retreated. A human, a member of the species that the Serati had rejected for centuries, had done what no weapon or army could do. He had reached across the greatest distance imaginable and found something worth saving. 1 year later, the first human embassy opened on Serati Prime. Ethan stood at the ceremony, wearing robes of blue and silver, watching as the two civilizations met properly for the first time. Valeth stood beside him, her hand in his. "You could have gone home," she said quietly. "Your family would have welcomed you." Ethan watched as human diplomats shook hands with Serati nobles. He thought about his mother and his sister, whom he had contacted weeks ago. They had cried with joy to learn he was alive. They had begged him to return, but he had made a different choice. "Home is not a place," he said, repeating words Valeth had spoken to him long ago. "Home is a purpose, and my purpose is here now." In the distant void, the Requiem still watched, still learned. Sometimes on quiet nights, Ethan could feel it listening, not with hunger anymore, but with something that might one day become understanding. Humanity had reached out into the darkness and found that even the darkness could learn to reach back. That was what humans did. They built bridges where none existed. They found connections where only isolation had been. They refused to stop believing that something better was possible. And sometimes, against all odds, they were right.